Hey, you guys, Erin here. I am doing something definitely different today. This is kind of a weird, spontaneous thing that I decided to do. I'm going to be breaking down the natal chart for Miss Candace Owens. And why am I doing this? I'm not really sure. I'm very intrigued by what's going on with this whole situation. I am somebody who's always questioning everything under the sun, and I really mean that. I never, ever, ever, ever trust the mainstream narrative. And really, for me, that started back in 2001 on September 11th in my 20s. Now, what I'm going to do in this recording is I'm gonna start out by pulling up Miss Candace Owens' natal chart and talking about some things that really stand out to me. I'm going to break down her sun and her moon, and then I'm going to pull up. I can't find any sort of confirmed time of birth for Candace. However, I have a very strong sneaking suspicion that she was born as the sun was about to set. I'm pretty sure I've got her rising sign figured out. The rising sign is what is determined by the time of birth. And so I'm going to go into reasons why I see that. And then I'm going to go through her. She's got a really, really strong and very fascinating Mercury that is receiving an abundance of really strong energy right now. So I'm going to go through her Mercury, her fairly conjunct Jupiter. I'm going to go through the most prominent parts in her chart, but just kind of buzz through that. But what I really want to get to is transits that she is experiencing right now, some things that are unfolding for her. And I'm going to do most of that based on it. Doesn't matter what time she was born, but I'm also going to point out why another reason I feel very strongly that I'll just say right now, I'm pretty sure she's a Scorpio rising. And that makes sense not only in her natal chart, but what she is currently experiencing. And let this be known that I don't even, I kind of feel like she's just part of some bigger psychological operation. Whether she's aware of it or not, she might be part of the CIA. Maybe I have no idea. And so I'm kind of going at this as just hoping that there's some authenticity behind what is being presented to us, the people of the world. And also, I also wanted to point this out that it's like, this very much lines up with stuff that I've been talking about for at least a year. That, we as a collective are going through extreme changes, like extreme, humanity itself is going through massive, massive changes. A lot of this has to do with the fact that Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and Saturn and Jupiter all kind of change signs within a year of each other, which is a very rare occurrence. I think we're going through bigger changes than we've seen in probably over 200 years as humanity and as a collective. And I think a lot of this is going to be played out through humanity's perspective or what humanity sees in politics and religion as well. And I'm kind of loving what I'm seeing because for myself, I just do not participate in politics. And I get a lot of heat for this, but I just don't vote. And trust me, I've been attacked from every angle by friends, family members, people out there in the world that have no idea who I am have come after me for this. And it's because I just lost faith. I lost 100% faith in especially the federal government. And what I'm loving seeing is a lot of voices out there, like big political voices out there, not necessarily politicians, but people who have been very much involved with strong political opinions are all of a sudden kind of joining this team of, and I guess I know I'm not alone in this. And I do feel like quite a few of my regular listeners, I know a lot of my friends have the same kind of ideas and views as I do. And so maybe some of you are also a little bit excited about that. It's almost like I feel like stuff that myself and my network of friends have been talking about for years is now becoming slightly unfolding into a little bit more of mainstream, like basically the view that doesn't, somebody like Candace Owens, who, and I understand that there's a lot of this going on with Tucker Carlson right now as well, and other voices as well. People that were super, super hardcore conservative, yes, pro-Trump, yay, Trump, are now all of a sudden like, wait a minute here. It doesn't matter which side you are on. the whole darn thing is corrupt. The whole entire system is corrupt. And from my own personal opinion, it's corrupt with some very, very, very evil forces. And I do think more and more people are, for lack of a better term, waking up to this. And also, there's one more thing I was going to say about that. I think that's kind of what is going on, even if it is, just some sort of, MK Ultra psyop on humanity or whatever. I still see that it's almost like it's kind of part of what's supposed to play out here. It's like, as I've been saying for a very long time, I think the whole house of cards needs to come down. And I think that that's kind of these, I mean, what she got like the number one podcast in the world over the last month or something like that. Don't quote me on that, something like that. And it's becoming and more people are starting to realize that. And whether you love Candace or hate Candace or whatever, don't really care about Candace, I think that this information is really quite fascinating to observe. And not only that, but I'm totally. I think free speech is probably the most important thing in the world right now. I want to hear what other people have to say. I don't. I have no problem. I've got people in my family that are very, very close to me who are very, very, for lack of a better term, left wing, and then people who are very, very close to me, people who I love dearly, who are very, very conservative and right wing. And I've seen these people kind of crash out, having conversations with each other. I'm somebody who wants to hear both. Like I said, I don't vote. But I like to know what's going on behind the scenes. And so I want to hear what everybody's got to say. And I'm always open to change my mind. I am always, if somebody gives me a piece of information that goes, oh, wow, okay, yeah, actually, maybe I was totally wrong about that. And so there's that. Let's get into this. I'm going to go ahead and pull up her chart here. Actually, one more thing to say about this. I really, from the bottom of my heart, authentically apologize if this triggers anybody, because I know that there's a lot of again, like religious views and perspectives. And from my understanding, Candace has very, very strong religious beliefs. And I certainly don't want to, I don't want to upset anybody, because I understand astrology is not exactly welcome in a lot of religious views. I was actually raised in a very religious home, went to Bible school, was actually raised Catholic, went to Bible school, was baptized, went to First Communion, went through all of it. And I love, if I'm being honest, I actually love the Bible, and I love and fully support most vast majority of the like Christian values. However, I'm just not somebody, I don't see myself at any time in my life, at least moving forward, like really wanting to dedicate myself to one particular organized religion. Again, I'm always open, love to hear about all different things. I love hearing about it. I love learning about it. I especially love like the philosophy behind things, and the psychology behind things. But also, again, I'm an astrologer. This is what I do. And again, I think that we should all be able to share our views. I think we should all be able to share our perspective without anybody getting terribly butthurt about it. Okay, so what I work with is called geocentric Western astrology. With that said, what we're looking at here is a snapshot of what we call the tropical zodiac on Candace Owens' date of birth based on her location. Okay, and this is, and again, I've said this every time I do somebody's chart. I obviously I can't, I wasn't there when she was born, so I don't know for sure, if this is actually her natal chart, but what I could find online was April 29th, 1989, and in Stamford, Connecticut. Now, again, I think she was born sometime around like a window of time around 740, basically right before sunset, and there's reasons for that, and I'll get into it. Okay, so let's start here. This right here, like basically Candace Owens would be right here in the middle of this thing where I'm moving my mouse. These things right here, in case you're super new here, I think most of you out there understand this already, but these are right here, the symbols for the planets and the celestial bodies. Like this is Chiron, this is Mars, this is Jupiter, this is Mercury, this is Venus, this is the sun, down here is the moon. When we go in the wheel just a little ways, these are the symbols for the zodiac signs that all these planets and celestial bodies were beaming through onto Candace when she took her first breath of air. Okay, now, this right here is a symbol for the sun. So the sun is really what rules over our inner being and our sense of identity. And when she was born, the sun was coming through 9 degrees Taurus. This right there is the glyph for the sign of Taurus. Now, Taurus is such a lovely energy. I mean, it's very strong. Statistically speaking, here, the sign of Taurus has incredible vitality because it holds energy and it's a fixed earth sign. And it tends to present itself with calmness and patience. And please do not get me wrong, I totally see like the we'll get into why Candace is so fierce, okay? But also, it's by nature internally a very strong energy because it doesn't want to overexert itself. It holds energy in, but she's got a absolutely the Taurus beautiful face. Doesn't mean every single person out there who's a Taurus is going to be beautiful, but when she was born, the sun was fairly close to Venus, which I'll talk about that in a moment here. But that really does say a lot about she's, in my very strong opinion, a very, very beautiful woman. I mean, like the full, luscious, voluptuous lips and very like kind of like distinguished cheekbones, a very, very beautiful face. And not only that, but this sign of Taurus tends to, for the most part, tends to understand the value of working hard because it tends to like material things. It tends to not only want like beauty. A lot of Taurus ladies out there love their beauty products, but it's also, keeping the house looking beautiful. I bet you her bedroom has like really fluffy, super comfy, nice blankets and pillows on it. And, I bet you just everything in the house. I can't see her as somebody with clutter. I see her with things being very, very well organized and very aesthetically pleasing in the home and likes the home to look welcoming and comfortable and kind of like a softer atmosphere. And in fact, if you go and you look, if you've never seen Candace's channel, it's really, if you've never watched any of her work, good luck. You have to kind of go back and watch. I mean, most prominently since Charlie Kirk's alleged assassination, and I'm using that word allegedly because again, I question everything. I question every little thing under the sun. But she doesn't just do her videos. There's videos on her YouTube, but you'd have to go click on the part that says live and watch her live streams. From what I've seen, it looks like I think she goes live 5 days a week. It looks like she takes weekends off. She goes live for like an hour or something like that. And it's she goes deep. She goes deep. But in the background of, I would imagine it's a studio. Everything is so well put together. It's a beautiful background. I mean, beautiful, which is very Taurus energy, especially Sun conjunct Venus in Taurus. Okay, now there's so much more I could go into here, but I don't want to I don't want to bore you guys. I want to get to the good stuff. I want to get to the heart of this. So for right now, let's talk about her moon right here in the sign of Aquarius. So the moon is really what rules over, it's our emotional side of us, like how we process things emotionally and internally. And the sign of Aquarius it's this sign that's constantly trying to seek like a higher level of truth. It's a sign that sometimes is described as cold and detached. And a lot of that is because the sign of Aquarius is very much about a detaching from emotional stuff to understand it intellectually. And not only that, but it's very much the sign of humanitarianism. You'll notice a lot of people with their moon in Aquarius, they have this kind of a drive to like caring for worldly matters, for humanities, the value of humanity, that sort of thing. And not only that, but it's also a sign that when I say like a higher level of truth, I mean, we often will see the sign of Aquarius described as like the genius of the zodiac. And people always are like, I know Aquariuses, they're not geniuses. It certainly doesn't mean everybody who's an Aquarius is going to be a genius, but it's the sign that like thinks outside of the box. It's like revolutionary. And again, it's like this sign that it especially moon in Aquarius, it's the sign that wants to kind of learn the lesson from an emotional situation. It wants to dissect the emotional situation rather than allowing for, emotional, stuff to just overwhelm. And it's actually a very, very fascinating energy. And not only that, but a lot of people who have their moon in Aquarius, you'll notice they will tend to almost get addicted to, maybe not addicted. Some of them will definitely get addicted, but for a lot of people, they're the ones that are kind of up at night, using their devices. It's a sign, it's a very electrical energy. It's a very technologically advanced energy. And I totally see her like doing her research. And we're going to get into the research part of, again, please understand everything I'm saying here. I'm presenting this as if we are seeing authentic Candace Owens. Okay. And I feel like this is her natal chart. I do. I feel like that. Speaking on Charlie Kirk, like Charlie Kirk, I couldn't find a time of birth for Charlie Kirk when I was studying his chart. I'm pretty sure that dude is a Sagittarius rising. I do have a little bit of a knack for being able to figure out people's rising sign, especially if I hear stuff about their life. But a lot of this has to do with the persona. And where I was going with that is the research part of her. There's many parts, but I do think because her if she is a Scorpio rising, I get touched like super driven by research. But furthermore, Moon in Aquarius, like using electronic or technological devices to do the research, to break down something emotional that's going on. Like, I got to learn about this. I need to understand this, especially using, I mean, if this was, 100 years ago or something, it would be more like going through massive books of, encyclopedias and all kind like old newspapers and that sort of thing. This day and age, it would be very much using things that are of a technological nature to do the research, especially if it's something that's about something that's emotional. Okay, now the next thing I want to talk about is what I think is her rising sign. So what I'm looking at here is I'm using the whole sign house system. This right here would be the symbol for her rising sign or her ascendant. Now, when I first started like watching Candace Owens stuff, I did not allow myself to, because I do this. I'm weird. I like to psychoanalyze. I did not want to look up her natal chart yet. I didn't want to look it up. I wanted to watch her, at least a few videos of her. And I'm thinking to myself, I think she's a Scorpio. I think she's a Scorpio. I could totally see the Taurus face, but I kept thinking she might be a Scorpio. Scorpios love research. They are passionate about it. Certainly not everybody who's a Scorpio out there is going to be driven by research, but a lot of them are, especially things that are of a very mysterious nature, things that would have to do with, oh boy, involving psychology, like mystery, things that are even like of an occult kind of nature. And not only that, but it's this very intense energy. Okay. The sign of Scorpio is the most intense and magnetic sign of the zodiac. In fact, Scorpio over here and Taurus are really said to be the most magnetic of all the signs. And I completely understand that. And I agree with that. People who have this, especially the combination of Taurus Scorpio energy, people are intrigued by, they're magnetically drawn to them. And not only that, but when you watch her talk, the look she has in her eyes is so fierce and it's so intense, which is super scorpionic. And not only that, but if she is a Scorpio rising, then using the whole sign house system, at least that would put her sun in the seventh house, her sun and her Venus in the seventh house over here. The houses are these things that look like a slice of pie if you're totally new to this. Seventh house is the house of relationships, okay? And yes, I know she's married. I don't know when she got married. I looked that up. I don't remember, but I know she's very dedicated to her husband. But I also see this. It's like people born, especially with their sun and their Venus in the seventh house, they like to work in partnerships. Clearly, Candace and Charlie Kirk were very much partners. They were not, I mean, I don't know. I really don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but at least what we've seen, there no romantic connection, but really driven together. And I see that Candace, naturally, just by nature, not that she, is consciously thinking to herself, my son's in the seventh house. I need to go work with a partner. It's rather just this underlying subconscious thing where it's like, I end up working with a partner and we work better together. And not only that, but Charlie Kirk was, at least from what we can see, he was a Libra. I think he had quite a bit of Libra energy, which is the sign of working with a partner. So I could totally see this being the way it is. Not only that, but I kind of feel it, and this is, I'm obviously just kind of, I can't prove anything I'm saying today, but I kind of feel like she would have Pluto below her ascendant, her rising sign. That would really, really enhance the the fierceness that comes through here. Pluto wants to reveal things. Pluto will pull us down. I mean, obviously, like hypothetically speaking, Pluto wants to pull us down and show us the dark side of the world, the dark side of this experience, the dark side of living, the underworld, the scary things, the shadowy things, okay? And Pluto wants to then reveal those things. Okay. And Pluto rules the sign of Scorpio. He works very, very well here. And not only that, but I think she knows how fierce, and I think she knows how good she is at doing the research work, especially when it comes to things that are of, working with dark forces. Okay. And if Pluto was above the horizon, I don't think she would know that quite as much. Pluto being, meaning if Pluto was up here, like above this little point right here, above the eastern horizon, then generally speaking, then she wouldn't be quite as aware. She'd still be really good at these things, but I don't think she'd be as aware of it. But Pluto being below the horizon there, I think like you can see it in her eyes. Like she knows she's got this strong level of intensity and she's gonna figure things out. Now, again, I don't want to keep repeating this, but please understand that I am presenting this as if what we're seeing from Owens is like authentically her. Okay, now the next thing I got to talk about over here is her Mercury at 0 degrees Gemini. Okay, now I kid you not, I see this time and time again. People who have early degree Mercury and Gemini they speak so quickly. They love to learn. It's because Mercury is really what brings information through our nerves and delivers information into our spinal cord and brings information back out for us to communicate. Mercury is the messenger of the gods. He's the data processor in our consciousness. And anything that's at 0 degrees, it works. It's the purest form of that energy. So Mercury rules the sign of Gemini. This is a very, very strong Gemini mercurial influence coming through here. Pure mercurial Gemini energy. Gemini is, I mean, yes, it's a sign of duality. It could be, there's a shiftiness that comes through here, but it's the forever student. The motto for the sign of Gemini is I think. It's the sign that is always wanting to pay attention to the facts. Okay. And not only that, but it's also the sign of communication. If you watch her talk, it's very rapid fire. In fact, one time I was watching her, one of her like I haven't been able to watch her actual live streams while they're live. Like I said, I've just over the last, I don't know, it's maybe been kind of over the last month and a half that I've gone back and I've watched her like old live streams from the last kind of going back into July. Because that's when I see that she started to experience these really, really strong transits. And not only that, but that's when her channel started getting a whole heck of a lot more views. And one time I was watching one and I thought that because if you're familiar, you on YouTube, you can make it the speed go faster. Like you could put it on 1.5 speed or you can put it up to 2.0 speed. So the person's like talking really, really fast. And I do that a lot, especially if I'm watching something that is, a couple hours long. I don't really have a lot of patience to sit there and listen to somebody talk slowly. I always appreciate people that talk very quickly for some reason. Maybe it's my Mercury and Aries, but I thought that I had my YouTube like up on marked up to 1.5 speed because she was so fast with her talking. And then I was like, no, it's a regular speed. And so then I thought maybe there was somebody on her end, like somebody working her technical stuff that was able to turn it up a speed. But then I don't think so. I think this is just how she talks, especially now that I've looked at her natal chart. Um, and before, but again, before I even like when I was watching her stuff before I looked at her natal chart, I just looked at her natal chart for the first time about a week ago, and was like, oh my gosh, this is so spot on. That's her Mercury in 0 degrees Gemini with the quick thinking, fast talking. But I thought she might have been a Scorpio, but I also very much saw that very beautiful Taurus face. And so all this just makes so much sense to me. Now, also, when she was born, this right here is Jupiter. And what I'm talking about right now doesn't matter what time she was born. I'll try to remind myself to mention when things would matter what time she was born. What I'm talking about right now doesn't matter what time she was born. Mercury is fairly close to Jupiter. I mean, it's about a 9-degree orb, so it's a big orb. It's not a strong conjunction, but it's still there. And Jupiter, basically, to generalize this, anything Jupiter touches, he expands it and he makes it a bigger deal. So Jupiter here, fairly close to Mercury, all those things that I just talked about with Mercury, fast talking, quick thinking, and very intrigued by the facts and paying attention to all it's like the forever student that is not faith-based. I definitely see her, she's driven by faith, and I'll get into that. But specific to her Mercury and Gemini, it's very much the intellect that's going in, focusing in, not just on the details, that's more Virgoan, but the facts of things as this intellectual student. And Jupiter kind of is making that, he's expanding that, he's kind of making it a bigger deal. But also, Jupiter has a very big influence on things. It's like Jupiter's kind of the teacher. Jupiter's kind of the one that brings the wisdom and expands the whole picture of things. Jupiter is very faith-based. And so this very well could be bringing in the combination. There's more things that bring in her, I think her very strong connection to religion. And I could be wrong. I think she's Christian. I don't know. I don't think she's Catholic. And I don't know. Don't quote me on that. I can't remember every little detail about her. But I know she's very religious. Jupiter being fairly close to Mercury could be playing a role in that, but I think there's other reasons for her strong ties to religion. But Jupiter overall, it's like the combination of the professor, okay? Jupiter is the professor. The sign of Gemini is the student. It's the combination of these things. And not only that, but it's like this, a very strong drive for wisdom, a very strong drive for things like, again, like the student that's paying attention to the facts and then growing it into the whole grand big picture. I hope that's making sense. Now, furthermore, if she is, now what I'm about to talk about would matter what time she was born. If she is a Scorpio rising and was born sometime around sunset, and we're using the whole sign house system, this would put these things in the eighth house, which the eighth house loves research. Okay. I mean, yes, it's the house of death and rebirth, the house of transformation. It's very deep, deep, like the deep part of spirituality kind of part of the chart. But it's also this house that sometimes people with a busy eighth house will just by nature love to like study the psychology of things, or even just overall like studying things with a lot of intense amounts of research, and not only just intense amounts. Again, it's like putting all the tiny little dots together, especially that would make so much sense for Jupiter and Mercury to be in her eighth house. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about is her Mars, which is right here at 0 degrees Cancer. As I've been saying for, I don't know, at least the last 6, 8 months or something like that, that anybody with anything between 0 and 1 degrees of any zodiac sign is definitely going through something. And that has a very big influence from Pluto, Uranus, Neptune, Saturn, all of those guys have been activating like the degrees between 0 and kind of going up to 2 degrees of really all of the zodiac signs in some way, shape, or form. So here we've got our Mercury at 0 degrees Gemini, and then we've got her Mars at 0 degrees Cancer. Okay, now people born with, if you think about what Mars influences, Mars is our physical drive, our physical willpower. Mars is the planet of war. I mean, if you just look at the symbol for Mars, he wants to pierce, he wants to penetrate. Mars rules our muscles, our adrenals. Mars is what makes us take action. This sign of Cancer, it's the nurturer, it's the mother, it's emotional. The motto is I feel. This just in and of itself creates a, like when she wants something, like a drive, an emotional drive for it. Let's see, what's the best way to describe this? Is that when she wants to go after something, if she sees something, I need the answer to that, or I need to talk to that person. It's her emotions that are, which can be a strong force. Yes, Mars is definitely debilitated in the sign of Cancer. It's certainly not Mars's favorite sign to be in. But at the same time, there's always benefits. There's always pros and cons to every little thing in astrology. Every sign, every house, every planet, every aspect, there's going to be pros and cons to. And one of the, I mean, you could call it a pro and a con. One of the very significant things that comes through with Mars and Cancer, especially at 0 degrees, is this like emotions can make us do things. Emotions can give us the passion to go after something. And Mars, especially at 0 degrees in Cancer, really, really revs things up in that way. Okay, now it's also very amplified because here we have Chiron in Cancer, 3 degrees Cancer. They're about 3 degrees away from each other. That is a pretty darn tight conjunction. Now, Chiron, this I kind of feel like, and I haven't seen anything real specific to this, like seen her mention anything about this, but I kind of feel like there was something in childhood that one thing I did hear her say in one of her, live stream podcast things was that she said she grew up like without, and I can't remember the exact words she used, but something along the lines of she didn't have a lot of money growing up. Like they grew up without a lot of money, and she said something along the lines of like she used to, in essence, like dwell on that or be sad about that. But now at the point she's at in life, she's like, I'm actually really, really grateful for because it made me work harder. It made me stronger to grow up without the comfort of, material things all over the place. And it's almost like what manifests here, there's these sort of wounds from early childhood that gave her even amplifying this emotional drive, this passion to go after things that she wants. And not only that, but I also see this as she really wants to be home with her children in the home setting. And I know I did hear her say something about how, I guess within the last, I don't know, 6 months or so, she is now homeschooling her children. And she was very, very passionate about it when she was talking about that and really encouraging others, get your kids out of public school, which I hate to say it, but I totally agree with that. And because there's this like emotional drive, the sign of Cancer, it's the mother, it's the nurturer. And so she wants to be at home caring for her children. And a lot of that I think has to do with her own childhood. And again, like sort of wounds that came from that, not necessarily that she's consciously thinking to herself, "Oh my God, my childhood. I wish my parents could have been home more with me or something like that." Um, but and that's what's I don't think she's consciously thinking to herself, this is why I want to stay home with my children. But I think there is, just because she seemed so passionate about it when she was talking about it, this really does make sense that there's some sort of, to simplify it, like a subconscious wound from her own childhood that makes her want to stay home with her children even more. But I also think that it's not so easily obtained. I mean, and if you think about it, if she really does have like the number one podcast in the world, she's probably pretty busy. But again, I've heard her say in a couple of these shows that she's put out, that she is taking time out of her day to make sure she's doing like homework, for lack of a better term, with her children, that sort of thing. But I don't think it's necessarily very easily obtained, but she's very, very passionate about it. And not only that, but again, now what I was just talking about doesn't matter what time she was born. Her Chiron and Mars are very tightly conjunct, about 3 degrees away from each other in the sign of Cancer. But if she is a Scorpio rising, if she was born around sunset, then that puts these things in the ninth house, which this ninth house has a lot to do with things like religion, okay? Things that are philosophical, things that are um, advanced knowledge, things that expand the consciousness. The ninth house is a very faith-based energy. This would give that emotional drive to to things that are like kind of, for lack of a better term, a religious nature, like wanting to not necessarily just say, "Oh, here's this religion. Okay, yeah, I'll join it," but rather, I need to learn more about this. I need to read the Bible. I need to understand. I think she said something about like her husband was really into theology. And she's like, "Oh, tell me about that. I want to know more. I want to know more." And that's very, very ninth house energy, an emotional drive for those things. I feel like there was something else I was going to say about that, but it slipped my mind. So we'll leave that for now. Let's come down here to this right here is Uranus, which Uranus, it was making a very strong opposition. What I'm about to talk about, no, please try not to get confused. I'm doing my best here to make sense of this. But this opposition, this red line, that would be there no matter what time she was born. It's like her Uranus makes a pretty darn strong opposition to that natal Chiron and Mars, but mostly Chiron. And so Uranus, he stimulates things. Uranus irritates things, if I'm being honest. But it's like he's going, "Oh, this is so important up here." All those things that I just talked about, that Chiron conjunct Mars, this like emotional drive to be home and nurturing her children and her husband and her family and have this home life. Uranus is going, "Oh, you gotta," it's like almost like, um, really activating that part of her, but also kind of makes it difficult. And at the same time, I mean, I think she's very much like a non-conformist, especially with this. I mean, there's so many different things that I could go into here. Part of it is this opposition between her Chiron and Mars and Uranus and Capricorn. But furthermore, her moon in Aquarius also would make her kind of like going against status quo or not wanting to conform to the norm. Okay. But also, here we have Neptune conjunct Saturn. Very, very tight conjunction going on here between her Saturn and her Neptune in Capricorn. Okay. So it's like Saturn here in Capricorn is the ultimate bringer of things need to be practical. Hard work brings, in good things, and we're practical people over here with Saturn and Capricorn. But Neptune here brings in the visions and the dreams and the ideas. This is actually, I do think that this plays a little bit of a role in her commitment to religion and bringing it down to, what she would consider like this is just the way it is, like this is practicality, this is the Bible, this is what we follow, and it's not, it's this combination of things. But it also, this would come through, what I'm about to say does matter what time she was born. If she is a Scorpio rising, if she was born sometime around sunset, these things would all come through her third house, which this is the house of communication. Okay, the house, and there's plenty of other things I could say about this, but it's like her immediate environment, okay, and who she's communicating with. I think that, I mean, clearly communication is a major, major role in her experience here. Like a lot of people who've got a busy, strong third house will be authors, which she's an author. I think I know she has one book, Make Him a Sandwich, I think it's called. And then I think she's has another book coming out. I don't know that for sure, but that's I just briefly was looking into these things. But that just being the author of a book is very, very, especially Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn in her third house. This house of communication, because it's not just verbal communication, it's also written communication. And especially, again, this opposition that would go from Uranus up here. This ninth house is like the third house would be more like writing the book. The ninth house would be sending that, like publishing the book worldwide, or at least, like internationally. That would be ninth house. And I would think that she would have an emotional drive for that as well. Like, oh boy, I got all these things to say, third house energy, and I need the whole world to see it. Okay. Like this third house would be like if this stuff was not in the ninth house and it was just in the third house, it's more like, okay, I wrote this book for my local community and, I shared it with my neighbors or whatever it is, that sort of thing. But this stuff up here is saying, no, we need the world to see this information. And not only that, but a lot of people have like a strong third house, busy third house, will be fairly connected through things like social media, which clearly Candace Owens is she's very popular on, oh God, X. It used to be Twitter. I'm not on that platform, so I always forget what it's called. X. And also Instagram, obviously YouTube, that sort of thing. Very like committed to that. Okay. And from my understanding, again, I'm just going off what we're being told here, that she's actually the one who's running those social media accounts. I don't think she might have a helper, but I think I've heard her say is that she's the actual one making these posts, which is very, very interesting. Okay, which is also it's like Saturn saying, we're going to do this. We have to be practical about this and we have to be responsible with this. And then Neptune's going, okay, but we can also get creative with this. This is our dream. And not only that, but let's bring some sort of a religious nature to it. And not only that, but there's Uranus going, okay, but yeah, let's rebel. Let's make it something rebellious. Let's make it something that's like, again, like the non-conformist. And in the sign of Capricorn, it's like ambition, ambition, ambition. Okay, so there's that. Now let's talk about these nodes. Okay, so her north node over here at 2 degrees Pisces, her south node, of course, over here opposite that at 2 degrees Virgo. So let's just say that she came into this world already have mastering this sign of Virgo. Virgo is the one that's very, very detail oriented. Okay. Virgo is the sign that it's the sign that can't look at the whole grand big picture because it's so zoomed in on all the little details, which could play a very big role in her, being naturally good at paying attention to those details. And over here, her north node, this is pulling her into this Piscean influence, which Pisces is the spiritualist. Okay. Pisces, look, it's the sign of oneness. It's the sign of, that can very much look at the whole big picture of things from a very, very spiritual and mystical perspective. And I feel like that plays a big role in her connection to things like religion and faith, but also if she is a Scorpio rising and using the whole sign house system, these things being in her ninth house, this is her north node in that sign of mysticism with very strong trines, these blue lines harmonizing up here to Chiron and Mars, emotional drive potentially stemming from childhood coming through this ninth house, which the ninth house has a lot to do with things that are of a religious or faith-based nature or even philosophical nature. Okay, so there's all that. I mean, I could go deeper. Well, let's briefly point out that Venus and her sun over here, they trine with all this Capricorn energy. She's earthly, but also unearthly. It's like when I say earthly, it's like she understands, she came into this world understanding the value of taking care of our physical responsibilities, our work in the world, that sort of thing. But then there's also this Saturn conjunct Neptune brings in this sort of, again, like spirituality, but her North Node in Pisces is pulling her towards the energy of more of a mystical nature and seeing the grand big picture of the world from a spiritual perspective. Okay, so there's that. Now, what I want to talk about next is her transits. Let's go to right now. Okay, now, first of all, the thing that stands out to me most is her Mercury in 0 degrees Gemini. Okay, now what's been going on? Let's start here. This right here is transiting Uranus. Okay, if you're super new, the inner wheel is her natal chart. The exact same thing we're just looking at now. It's just smaller and it's inside of this bigger wheel or this outer wheel. This outer wheel is where all the planets and celestial bodies are right now up in the sky. This right here is transiting Uranus. Well, Uranus currently in retrograde at 29 degrees Taurus, but went over earlier this year in 2025, went over, crossed into the sign of Gemini and went over her natal Mercury. Woo! In the sign of Gemini at 0 degrees. That's shocking. That's shocking with like, not only new ideas, but like revelations, like, oh my gosh, like shocking to the system, to the nervous system, things that would be stimulating, some things that would create excitement, but at the same time, like over the top with like overstimulation of a rebellious nature. Okay. And some people, I keep reading like comments underneath people's posts about Candace, like she's crashing out, she's crashing out. And to a certain degree, sure, I can understand why some people would say that. I'm just taking it all in. I'm just listening to what everybody's got to say about it. But that Uranus is shocking. Uranus is very electrical. Like I've mentioned before, if Uranus is a human, it's the kind of human that like just shows up at your house without even letting you know and like busts in the door and is like, bah, I'm here, and starts throwing like little balls of electricity all over the house. That's very Uranus energy. It's spasmodic. It's a shocking, rebellious nature that can feel like it can feel rude, but on the same token, like Donald Trump has a lot of Uranus energy in his natal chart. He's very abrupt and like raw, like just not afraid to say things that come off as very rude to most people. That's very Uranus energy. And that's what it's doing to her own. She already has a very strong Mercury at 0 degrees Gemini. That's a very, very, like Mercury doesn't, he's extremely stimulated. When I say technically Mercury's a hermaphrodite, but regardless, it's like to a certain degree. I mean, all the archetypes of Mercury are of a masculine nature. So that's why I have this tendency to say Mercury, he. But Mercury, he could not be in a more stimulated degree and sign of the zodiac than at 0 degrees Gemini. So when this shocking, revolutionary, like spasmodic electrical energy comes over the natal Mercury, it's like to anybody that's got to be like, whoa, what's going on in my life? Not even necessarily in the outer environment, more like inside the self, inside the nervous system. Okay. But then Mercury, I mean, sorry, Uranus, he's now in retrograde. He's going to go back over her natal Mercury in April and May of next year. I think we're going to see some even more crazy and wild stuff going on. I really do feel like April and May are going to be pretty strong months of 2026 for everybody, but especially for Miss Candace Owens. But at the same time that that's been going on, now keep in mind, this is if she's a Scorpio rising, this would be in her eighth house, which is the house of death and rebirth, which can also be very much connected to psychic powers. Now let's get into that. Now, this let's go to Neptune. So this right here is Neptune, transiting Neptune, which also went to 0 degrees Aries and made an exact sextile up to her natal Mercury. These green lines are called sextile. What they create is they're opportunistic, but they're also, I mean, they're beneficial aspects. Okay. It's a ray that will activate a planet. Okay. It will activate some when we receive like all these green lines, what they do is they're sending a ray towards a planet in our natal chart, and they can very much activate it. And for the most part, they can be a good result. But they can also, because we're talking about some very extreme forces coming through here, power playing forces coming through here. I mean, I do think there's opportunity coming from it, but at the same time, if she is authentically presenting herself to us, I would imagine there's her constitution, her vessel is like, whoa, what is going on? Because at the same time, Uranus is, conjunct her natal Mercury. We've got Neptune here, tick-tocking back and forth between Pisces and Aries. He breaks down our psychic boundaries. Neptune puts holes in our psychic boundaries, creating very like a psychic porousness, making us more susceptible and more psychic in nature, but also to the point where things can feel confusing. Things can feel, because Neptune is a foggy energy. Neptune is very, very unearthly. Okay. Neptune is, imagine yourself out on a ship and you're alone and you're in the middle of the ocean and all you can see for miles in every which direction is fog and ocean. That would feel very confusing, but it would also feel like a very, very spiritual experience. It would also force a strong intuition to come through. Okay, that is super Neptunian energy hitting her natal Mercury at the same time that Uranus goes over her Mercury. So basically, to summarize this, not only is she being shocked, but she's also, and this, again, for the most part, what I'm talking about right now does not matter what time she was born. This is going on for her no matter what her rising sign is. Uranus went over her Mercury, and at the same time, Neptune over here is sending a ray up to that natal Mercury. So her Mercury's like, I mean, in essence, kind of under attack. And again, just in her chart, she already has an intensely strong Mercury. Okay, then at the same time that's been going on, we got Pluto over here. I mean, Pluto's kind of, he's a little bit past it, but still over the last year, like since November of last year, even a little bit before that, Pluto has been sending a trine. This blue line, this is a ray that Pluto is sending at her Mercury, all at the same time. Pluto, again, he's fierce. Pluto pulls us into the dark side of this experience. He's the ruler of the underworld. He shows us like the shadowy side to life. Okay. He's the planet of power, but the only way we can receive that power is by going through a deep and powerful and often very deeply spiritual transformational process. Okay. Pluto rules the psyche, and Pluto reveals things. It's like he reveals often what can feel very brutal and almost, I mean, I've seen people who've had really strong Pluto transits who have like in a sort of to a certain degree felt like they didn't even want to be here anymore. I don't know how else to word that. I mean, I could go even darker than that, but I'm not going to. But we always encourage them. You're going through a transformational process. Step into your spiritual willpower. You'll get through it. And so that's what Pluto does. And he's been sending this ray right at her poor Mercury. Her nervous system has got, see, this is what I'm talking about. Her being a Taurus, especially with her sun fairly conjunct Venus in Taurus, that's a strong constitution. Um, and hallelujah for that, if we care about the the native here, I would say hallelujah. She's got this strong Taurus calm nature. Taurus is the bull. Okay, it's stabilized. It's the fixed earth sign. Fixed meaning it holds energy and it doesn't want to be overexerted. Okay, and it's not like Candace Owens is not just thinking to herself, "Oh, I don't want to be overexerted, so I better." It's just what comes with this kind of a natal chart. But on the same token, in her, again, let's say this. I'm not talking about Candace Owens. I'm just giving somebody an astrology reading. I would be like, "Are you okay?" Because this is a lot of very, very strong activity going on especially in the nervous system. Okay. And not only that, but this would also activate things up in the brainwave. But Mercury in Gemini is also about communication. So it's all like flooding out of her. We're all seeing it. Maybe not everyone in the world, but a lot of people are watching it going, holy moly, what is going on here? I mean, this is better than any Netflix series I've ever seen. Okay, so those are the major heavy hitters. I could also, gosh, I could even talk about how Saturn also was sending a sextile ray up to her Mercury. And Saturn will, again, basically between January and February of 2026, Saturn is going to be sending another ray up to her Mercury, which could be really good for concentration. In fact, earlier this year, about 2 months ago, Neptune and Saturn were both beaming a sextile ray at her Mercury. Saturn probably was really making it a lot easier to concentrate, but at the same time, with that Neptunian energy coming through, I could also see her being like, what is going on? Like confusion and even more of a like need to zone in on details and facts and information and that sort of thing. Now, lastly, I'm going to talk about how she's approaching a nodal return. Okay, here's again her south node at 2 degrees Virgo, her north node at 2 degrees Pisces. The transiting south node is at 14 degrees Virgo. The transiting north node is at 14 degrees Pisces. If I move forward here, let's see if I can do the math here. I would imagine this would be sometime around April of 2026. That's when she's going to start. Oh, did I do that wrong? I think I did that wrong. I did that wrong. I meant to put in 2026. Let's go to 2026. There we go. Okay, so right around April, going all the way until July of 2026 is when her nodal return starts to get really, really strong. And this pushes her through. Like it's basically she's this Pisces North Node. Again, the spiritualist. I think she's going to have even more. I wouldn't be surprised if something happens where she starts to question her faith. Maybe not her faith, but like just faith, period. I would imagine, again, just basing this on what is being presented to us. I'm not Candace Owens, so I don't know the whole real story. But I would imagine that she would be already, if she's really kind of been awakening to all the really bad sadistic stuff that goes on in the quote unquote powers that be. Then she is aware of the really bad things that have gone on, behind the scenes with a lot of churches, the Calvary Church. Yeah, she's been looking into that. But I think she's probably been questioning, the faith of a lot of things. But probably like kind of opening herself up to, not to say she's questioning her own faith, like her own Christianity or her own Christian values, but questioning all the stuff that's going on behind the scenes that involve anything of a spiritual nature, but it's probably pulling her even more into that direction. And she might, between that time frame, between April of next year till the end of July of next year, we might start to see her lose a little bit of interest in focusing so harshly on the little details of things, because that south node, it's when we have this nodal return. It happens every 18 years when the nodes are in the same place that we were when we were born. um, It'll drain out more of this south node energy. I mean, that's ultimately what we're aiming in this life. We take on the qualities of our north node and leave behind the energy of our south node, and that tends to get like with stronger forces when we have these nodal returns. And so that Virgoan influence of paying attention to all the fine little details, we might see a little less than that. But on the other hand, let me go back to just her natal chart for a minute here. Something that kind of stood out to me was that her Mercury here, again, her extremely strong Mercury, makes a square to her south node and a square to her north node. Mercury also rules Virgo. And so that really, I don't know that she'll ever really leave this. To be clear, Mercury rules Gemini and rules the sign of Virgo, both of them. And so this is a pretty strong connection over here, kind of up in the ante for upping the ante for that mercurial influence. Mercury ruling the sign of Virgo is really has a big role in the detail oriented energy of that sign of Virgo. So I'm not really totally confident that we're going to see that detail oriented energy fading away after summer of next year for Miss Candace Owens. I think that's probably something that's always going to be a part of her. Okay, now let me just look briefly one more time at her transits because I feel like there was, oh yeah, okay. Another thing I'm going to mention here is that if she is a Scorpio rising, that means Jupiter here has been going through her ninth house since, what was it, June of this year? Earlier this year, summer of this year, Jupiter entered the sign of Cancer, going into her ninth house, which also very much influences things that expand the consciousness and things that could also be really, really good for her. You know, so many people buying her book from all over the world, and also could be bringing her almost like she has to have this connection to her religious faith. But moreover, starting next year, if I move forward here, let's just go with any time of 2026. Let's go with July 28th of 2026. Then we're going to see Jupiter here will enter into her 10th house, her house of career, which is going to be really, really interesting. I kind of feel like there's going to be even more hype around Candace Owens starting in the summer. The 10th house, it's the house of status. It's the house of career and recognition. And when Jupiter goes through there, people tend to get, like when Jupiter transits through people's 10th house, they tend to get a little more recognition. Career seems to become a bigger deal. And so that's something that we might see happen. But also, and again, this is if she is a Scorpio rising, but also we might see between summer of 2026 and February of 2028, we also might, it's like, I think she's going to get bigger. And then all of a sudden things start to fade for Candace Owens, because the South Node will also be going through there. I hope that made sense. This is probably really confusing for some people. One more thing I'm going to point out is that I don't see anything that screams she's going to be taken out. I don't see, and I didn't go into all the smaller planets and celestial bodies because they move too quickly for me to put too much emphasis on. I was mostly just focusing on the power players, the ones that move slower: Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, Jupiter, Saturn. Okay, but I don't see anything that says, "Oh my God, she might," you know. I don't see it. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it very well could be that there's somebody who was paid to try and do this to her. That's what she is saying. Again, I question everything. But I don't see anything that's screaming, "Oh my gosh, this very well could happen." Like with Charlie Kirk's assassination, I saw something, even without knowing what time he was born, I saw in his chart, like, oh my God, even if he, again, allegedly was assassinated, I wasn't there. I don't know. I wasn't standing right next to him. And there's a lot of different things that we could believe. Don't come at me. I'm just saying, I don't know what the heck is going on. But whether he is off in Valhalla and when his protection program, or if he actually did, if he was truly assassinated, what happened with the South Node and the Sun, right? What was it? Right, I can't remember, right over his midheaven or something like that, that was really, really prominent, that made a lot of sense for him to be, again, like quote unquote, taken out. Whereas I don't really see that with Candace. I will leave you with one more piece of information here. If you guys have been following the stuff that I've been following, and you're interested in this sort of thing, I did also look briefly at, because I know Tucker Carlson is also getting a lot of hype, especially because he brought Nick Fuentes, who I didn't even know the heck that was until everybody else in the world starts talking about it. But I do see some really like kind of heavy stuff going on for, oh my God, I'm just having my brain's not working right now. I just said his name, Tucker Carlson. I see some really, really heavy stuff going on for him. Really, really heavy stuff. Saturn and Neptune going over his North Node. And I kind of can see some intensity going on for him. I think let me know in the comments if you want me to do one on Tucker Carlson as well. And not only that, but leave in the comments if there's somebody that you guys want me to bring down their natal chart, because I want to start doing this more. I have fun doing this. I do this all the time by myself in my own house. And I think maybe it's just time where I start talking about it more publicly, sharing my opinions with a little more confidence, especially considering Pluto's going through my third house. If there's people that you want me to break down their natal chart, please do let me know in the comment section below. And if you'd like to schedule an astrology reading with me, if you'd like me to break down your natal chart and your transits, you can schedule through my website, which is erinwageastrology.com. I do hope to hear from some of you or all of you. And until next time, namaste to all of you.